Sweet life? Taste it now. That's what happens to men who steal women.
The smell of burnt coffee and broken dreams filled my cramped IT repair shop at 7 in the morning, but nothing could have prepared me for what I'd discover on my wife's laptop that day. My name's Tom Garrison, and I've spent the last 20 years fixing other people's problems while my own life quietly fell apart. Tom, can you look at my laptop? It's acting weird again, Marissa called from the kitchen, her voice carrying that familiar tone of barely concealed irritation. At 39, my wife still turned heads at the advertising agency where she worked, all sharp suits and sharper ambition. Me? I was the guy people called when their Wi-Fi died and forgot the moment it worked again. I grabbed her MacBook and headed to my shop, a converted garage behind our suburban house. The morning light filtering through dirty windows cast everything in a sickly yellow glow. Perfect metaphor for my marriage, I thought, firing up the diagnostic software. Just a corrupted cache, I muttered, running the cleanup routine. But something caught my eye in the recent files folder. Hotel confirmations, gym membership upgrades, and a folder labeled TD that made my stomach drop. Troy Dalton, Marissa's boss, the kind of guy who wore expensive cologne and thought a firm handshake could solve world hunger. I didn't open the folder, not yet, but I memorized exactly where it was. All fixed, honey, I called, carrying the laptop back inside. Marissa was already dressed for work, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. Thanks, you're a lifesaver. She kissed my cheek, a perfunctory peck that felt more like a business transaction. I'll be late tonight. Big presentation with Troy. Another one? I kept my voice neutral, years of practice hiding my thoughts. It's important, Tom. Some of us have careers that actually matter. The words hit like a slap, but she was already grabbing her gym bag and heading for the door. After she left, I sat in my kitchen, staring at my reflection in the black coffee. 42 years old, thinning hair, and a wife who looked at me like I was furniture. When had I become so invisible? My phone buzzed, a text from my buddy Nate. Beer tonight? Sarah's working late too. Sarah, Nate's wife, also coincidentally working late, also coincidentally a member of the same upscale gym as Marissa. The pieces were starting to form a picture I really didn't want to see. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I installed a small GPS tracker in Marissa's car, the kind I use to help customers find stolen laptops. If she was really working late, it would show her at the office. If not, the tracker's app showed her car at the Riverside Hotel at 9:47 p.m., the same hotel from those confirmation emails. I drove there, hands shaking on the steering wheel. The parking lot was dimly lit, full of shadows and secrets. And there, parked next to a silver Porsche I recognized from the agency's parking garage, was my wife's Honda. I didn't go inside. I didn't need to. The truth was sitting right there under the fluorescent lights, obvious as a neon sign. Instead, I went home and waited. Marissa stumbled in at 1:15 a.m., hair slightly mussed, makeup touched up, but not quite right. How was the presentation? I asked from the couch. Exhausting. Troy really pushed us hard. She wouldn't meet my eyes. I'm going to shower. As the water ran upstairs, I made a decision that would change everything. I opened my laptop and ordered a dashboard camera with night vision. If Marissa wanted to play games, I'd make sure I had the rules figured out first. But I wasn't prepared for what happened the next morning. The dashcam arrived 2 days later, a small black box that would either save my marriage or destroy it completely. I installed it while Marissa was at her early morning workout. Another new habit that had started 3 months ago. Tom, can I borrow your car today? Mine's making that noise again, she said when she got home, cheeks flushed and glowing in a way that had nothing to do with exercise. Sure thing, I tossed her the keys, my heart hammering. I'll take a look at yours later. She drove off in my Camry, completely unaware that every movement, every destination, every passenger would now be recorded in high definition. I spent the day pretending to work, checking the dashcam's live feed on my phone every few minutes. Office, lunch at a downtown bistro, back to the office, normal, boring, exactly what a faithful wife's day should look like. Then, at 6:30 p.m., the car moved again. But instead of heading home, it went straight to the Riverside Hotel. I watched the live feed as Marissa parked and waited. At 6:45, a silver Porsche pulled up beside her. Troy Dalton got out, tall and confident, wearing a suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. He walked to my car and got in. Even through the small dashboard screen, I could see Marissa's face light up in a way I hadn't seen in years. She leaned across the console, and they kissed with the desperate hunger of people who thought they were invisible. Jesus Christ, I whispered, watching my marriage disintegrate in real time. But it got worse. I missed you so much, Marissa's voice came through the camera's audio, clear as a bell. When can we stop sneaking around like this? Soon, baby. Jessica's getting suspicious, and your husband's not as stupid as he looks. We need to be careful. Jessica, Troy's wife, so this fool was cheating on his spouse, too. Tom's completely clueless, Marissa laughed, a sound like breaking glass. He spends all day in that pathetic little shop fixing broken computers and pretending he matters. I can't believe I wasted 20 years on him. 20 years. 20 years of marriage, of building a life together, of believing in us, reduced to a punchline in the front seat of my own car. I saved the video file and sat in my dark shop, staring at the concrete floor. The smart thing would be to call a lawyer, file for divorce, split everything down the middle and move on. The safe thing. But I wasn't feeling particularly smart or safe. Instead, I called Nate. We need to talk, I said when he answered, and you're not going to like what I have to show you. An hour later, Nate sat in my shop watching the dash cam footage on my laptop. His face went through the same progression mine had: confusion, disbelief, rage. That son of a witch, he said quietly. Sarah told me she was working late on a project with Marissa. They're both lying, I said. Question is, what are we going to do about it? Nate was quiet for a long moment, staring at the frozen image of our wives with their lovers. Finally, he looked up at me with an expression I'd never seen before. We're going to make them pay, he said. Not just divorce court pay, really pay. I should have talked him out of it, should have been the voice of reason. Instead, I found myself nodding. What did you have in mind? The plan started simple enough. Document everything, build an airtight case, then hit them where it hurt most. Their reputations, their careers, their comfortable little worlds built on lies and betrayal. Over the next week, I became a man obsessed. I installed tracking software on the laptop Marissa asked me to fix again. I hired a private investigator recommended by my divorce attorney. I even befriended Jessica Dalton at the grocery store, striking up conversations about how hard our spouses worked, how many late nights they put in. Troy's been so stressed lately, Jessica confided during one of these chance encounters. Always on his phone, working weekends, I barely see him anymore. Same with Marissa, I replied, hating how easy the lies came. But I guess that's what success looks like, right? Jessica's smile was sad and tired. I suppose sometimes I wonder if it's worth it. You have no idea, I thought. The PI's first report arrived on a Thursday. Photos of Marissa and Troy entering the hotel, credit card receipts for expensive dinners. A paper trail of deception that would hold up in any courtroom. But Nate and I had bigger plans than just winning a divorce settlement. We need to hit them where they live, Nate said, spreading the photos across my workbench like evidence at a crime scene. Their jobs, their social circle, their precious reputations. What are you thinking? Troy's got that big client presentation next week, right? The one Marissa's been helping him prepare for? Nate's grin was carnivory. What if his Porsche had some mechanical problems that morning? I stared at him. You want to sabotage his car? Nothing dangerous, just inconvenient. Sugar in the gas tank, maybe slash a tire or two. Make him miss the biggest meeting of his career. It was petty. It was risky. It was exactly what the vindictive part of my soul wanted to hear. And then what? Then we let their wives know exactly what kind of men they married. That Saturday night, while Marissa was at another work dinner, Nate and I drove to Troy's gym. The Porsche sat in the parking lot like a silver trophy, all polished chrome and arrogant curves. You sure about this? I asked, holding a bag of sugar and a knife. Are you? Nate countered. I thought about 20 years of marriage, about Marissa's laugh when she called me clueless, about Troy's hands on my wife while he sat in my car. The sugar went into the gas tank with a soft whisper. The knife slid through the sidewalls of 2 tires with barely any resistance. And when we were done, I left a note under the windshield wiper. From the husband you never met. Tom Garrison. Let him figure out what that meant. We were back home before midnight, adrenaline still coursing through our veins like electricity. I felt more alive than I had in months. Monday morning, my phone rang at 6:30 a.m. Tom, it's Marissa. Something terrible happened to Troy's car. Someone vandalized it in the gym parking lot. Can you believe that? I made appropriate shocked noises while fighting to keep the satisfaction out of my voice. That's awful, honey. Did he call the police? Of course, but they probably won't find anything. Troy's devastated. He missed his big presentation because of it. What a shame, I said, meaning the exact opposite. But our moment of triumph was short-lived. That evening, Marissa came home with news that changed everything. I need to tell you something, Tom, she said, sitting across from me at the kitchen table. Troy and we're in love. I'm leaving you. Just like that, no build-up, no explanation, no apology. 20 years dismissed with the emotional weight of a weather report. I see, I said, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. When? I'm moving out this weekend. I've already talked to a lawyer. Have you now? I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. She looked relieved, like she'd finally taken off a mask she'd been wearing too long. And Troy's leaving Jessica too? Something flickered in her eyes. That's more complicated. I bet it is. I stood up, walked to my laptop, and opened the dashcam footage. You might want to see this before you pack your bags. Marissa's face went white as she watched herself with Troy, listened to her own voice calling me pathetic and clueless. When it was over, she sat in stunned silence. You recorded us, she finally whispered. I recorded my own car, I corrected. You just happened to be in it. This is illegal. I'll have you arrested for invasion of privacy. I laughed, a sound with no humor in it whatsoever. Good luck with that, but you might want to check with Troy first. See if he's ready to have this conversation with Jessica. The color drained from her face completely. You wouldn't try me. But as it turned out, I didn't need to make that threat, because the next morning I discovered something that made our little suburban drama look like child's play. The call came at 7 a.m. from a number I didn't recognize, a woman's voice, shaky and desperate. Is this Tom Garrison? Yes. Who's this? My name is Jessica Dalton. I think we need to talk. My blood turned to ice water. About what? About what our spouses have been doing behind our backs, and about what else I found in my husband's computer. We met at a diner across town, neutral territory, where neither of our cheating spouses would think to look. Jessica looked like she hadn't slept in days, her eyes red-rimmed and haunted. How long have you known? She asked before I'd even sat down. About a week, I admitted. You? 2 days. I hired a private investigator after Troy's car was vandalized. The note you left made me suspicious. She slid a manila folder across the table. But Tom, it's not just our spouses. There are others. I opened the folder and felt my world tilt sideways. Photos of Troy with 3 different women, including Marissa, hotel receipts going back 2 years, and bank statements showing large cash withdrawals from accounts I'd never heard of. Your husband's been running a side business, Jessica continued, her voice barely above a whisper. He's been embezzling money from the agency and using it to fund his affairs, expensive hotels, gifts, trips. My investigator thinks he's stolen close to $200,000. Jesus Christ! I flipped through the evidence, each page more damning than the last. Does Marissa know? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Jessica's laugh was bitter. Either she's completely naive or she's in on it. I thought about Marissa's sudden interest in leaving me, her confidence about the divorce settlement, her certainty that she could start over with Troy. She knows, I said quietly. She has to know. Then we need to stop them before they disappear with everything. Jessica was right. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. This was about theft, fraud, and 2 people who thought they were smart enough to destroy multiple lives without consequences. What do you want to do? I asked. I want to burn their world down, she said with quiet intensity. Legally, completely, and very publicly. We spent the next 2 hours planning. Jessica would confront Troy that evening, wearing a wire provided by her PI. I would do the same with Marissa. We'd get them on record admitting to the affair and, hopefully, the embezzlement. But when I got home, Marissa was already packing. I thought you weren't leaving until the weekend, I said, watching her fold clothes into suitcases with mechanical precision. Change of plans, Troy found us an apartment. She didn't look at me, just kept packing. I'll send for the rest of my things later. What about your job? I'm transferring to Troy's new agency. He's starting his own firm. With stolen money, I thought, but didn't say. Instead, I pulled out my phone and started recording. Marissa, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. What? She finally looked up, annoyed. Did you know Troy was stealing money from the agency? The suitcase slipped from her hands, clothes spilling across the floor. What are you talking about? $200,000, Marissa. Embezzled over 2 years to pay for hotels and gifts and God knows what else. I kept my voice steady, conversational. Did you think I wouldn't find out? You're crazy, she said, but her voice shook. Troy would never... Troy's wife hired a private investigator. She has bank records, receipts, everything. The FBI is getting involved. That last part was a lie, but it had the desired effect. Marissa sank onto the bed, her face ashen. Oh God, what have we done? We! I stepped closer, phone still recording. So you did know. Not at first, she whispered. But when he started talking about leaving Jessica, about starting over somewhere new, I asked how he could afford it. He said he'd been saving money from side projects. And you believed him. I wanted to believe him. Tears started flowing down her cheeks. Tom, I never meant for it to go this far. I felt so trapped, so invisible. Troy made me feel alive again. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then I remembered her voice on the dash cam, calling me pathetic and clueless. Where is he now? I asked. At his office, cleaning out his files. He said we needed to be ready to leave town quickly. I pocketed my phone and headed for the door. Tom, wait! Marissa called after me. What are you going to do? I paused in the doorway, looking back at the woman I'd loved for 20 years. I'm going to finish what you started, I said. Then I drove to Troy's office, Jessica's evidence folder on the passenger seat, and a plan forming in my mind that would make our car vandalism look like a children's prank. Troy's agency occupied the top floor of a downtown office building, all glass walls and modern furniture designed to impress clients. At 9 p.m., the place was mostly empty except for security guards and a few dedicated workaholics, and Troy Dalton frantically shoving files into boxes like a man preparing to flee the country. I found him in his corner office, expensive suit wrinkled, hair disheveled, looking nothing like the confident hunter who'd stolen my wife. When he saw me in the doorway, he actually jumped. Tom, what are you doing here? Thought we should have a conversation, I said, closing the door behind me, man to man. Look, I know this is awkward, but $200,000, Troy. I sat down across from his desk, casual, as if we were discussing the weather. That's a lot of money to steal for a few hotel rooms. His face went white. I don't know what you're talking about. Your wife hired a private investigator. She has bank records going back 2 years. Every withdrawal, every transfer, every dollar you stole to fund your little midlife crisis. I leaned forward. Did you really think no one would notice? Troy's hands shook as he reached for his phone. I'm calling security. Go ahead. I'm sure they'd love to hear about your embezzlement scheme. Or maybe we should call the FBI instead. Jessica's PI seems to think they'd be very interested in your creative accounting. The phone clattered back onto the desk. Troy slumped in his chair like a deflated balloon. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, he said quietly. It started small, just a few thousand here and there. But then Marissa and we started making plans. Real plans, and I needed more money to make them work. So you decided to steal it? I was going to pay it back. His voice cracked with desperation. Once my new agency got off the ground, I would have replaced every penny. With what? You don't have any clients lined up. You don't have any startup capital except what you stole. You were planning to run away with my wife and hope nobody noticed the missing money. Troy's silence was answer enough. I pulled out my phone and showed him the recording of Marissa's confession. She told me everything, Troy, about the money, about your plans to skip town, about how this whole thing was your idea from the beginning. That's not true, he protested. Marissa knew about the money. She helped me plan where to move it, how to cover our tracks. She's as guilty as I am. Perfect. I'd gotten him to implicate both himself and Marissa in a single sentence. The phone was still recording. So you're saying my wife was an active participant in embezzling $200,000 from your agency? Yes. No. Troy realized he'd been trapped, but it was too late. You can't use that recording in court. I didn't consent to being recorded. Actually, in this state, only one party needs to consent to record a conversation. I consented. The recording is perfectly legal. I stood up, pocketing the phone. Enjoy explaining this to the police, Troy, and to your wife, and to your former clients when this hits the news. I was halfway to the elevator when he called after me. Tom, wait, we can work something out. I'll pay back the money, end things with Marissa, whatever you want. Just don't destroy my life over this. I turned around slowly. You should have thought about that before you decided to destroy mine. The elevator doors closed on Troy's stricken face, and I felt a satisfaction deeper than anything I'd experienced in years. But the night wasn't over yet. Jessica was waiting in the lobby, along with two men in cheap suits who had federal agent written all over them. Tom, meet Special Agents Morrison and Chen from the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, she said. I thought they might be interested in hearing your recording. I handed over my phone without hesitation. Troy Dalton just confessed to embezzling $200,000 and implicated my wife as an accomplice. Everything's on there. Agent Morrison nodded grimly. We've been building a case against Mr. Dalton for 3 months. Your evidence should be enough to make arrests. What happens now? I asked. Now we go upstairs and have a conversation with Mr. Dalton, and then we pay a visit to your wife. As the agents headed for the elevator, Jessica touched my arm. Thank you, she said quietly, for helping me find the truth. Thank you for showing me how deep this really went. We stood in the empty lobby, two people whose lives had been shattered by the same betrayal, watching justice finally catch up to the people who'd wronged us. But even as federal agents arrested Troy Dalton on charges of embezzlement and fraud, even as Marissa was led away in handcuffs as an accomplice, I knew this was just the beginning of their punishment. Because tomorrow, when the story hit the local news, when their colleagues and friends and neighbors learned the truth about what they'd done, the real consequences would begin. And I intended to make sure everyone knew exactly who Tom Garrison was. Not the pathetic, clueless husband they'd dismissed, but the man who'd brought down their entire house of lies. The story broke on the morning news 3 days later. Local ad executives arrested in embezzlement scheme ran as the lead story, complete with perp walk footage of Troy and Marissa being led away in handcuffs. I watched it from my kitchen table, coffee growing cold in my hands, as the reporter detailed their crimes. $237,000 stolen over 18 months. Multiple affairs. A planned flight to Mexico with the embezzled funds, the whole sordid story laid out for the entire city to see. My phone had been ringing nonstop since the arrests, reporters wanting interviews, neighbors offering sympathy, old friends I hadn't heard from in years calling to express their shock and support. But the call I was waiting for came at 10:47 a.m. Tom, it's Marissa! Her voice was barely recognizable, hoarse from crying. I need to see you, please. I'm not sure that's a good idea. Please, she begged. I'm out on bail, but my lawyer says, Tom, I could go to prison for 5 years. I need to explain. Need to make you understand. Understand what? That you helped your boyfriend steal $250,000? That you plan to run away to Mexico with stolen money? I think I understand perfectly. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, she sobbed. I never wanted to hurt you. I felt so lost, so invisible. Troy made me feel important again. Important enough to become a federal criminal. I know how it looks, but I swear I didn't know about the money at first. By the time I figured it out, I was in too deep. I was scared to say anything. I almost laughed. You were scared? You destroyed our marriage, helped steal hundreds of thousands of dollars, and planned to flee the country. But you were scared? Tom, please, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm begging you. Don't testify against me. Don't help them send me to prison. The audacity was breathtaking. After everything she'd done, she still expected me to protect her. I'll think about it, I lied. But first, I want you to do something for me. Anything. I want you to meet me at Riverside Park tomorrow at noon, the pavilion where we had our first date. I want to hear the whole truth, everything you haven't told me yet. And Marissa? Yes? Bring Troy with you. There was a long pause. Tom, I don't think... Both of you, or no deal. I want to hear from both of you how this happened. How you justified destroying so many lives. You owe me that much. Okay, she whispered. We'll be there. I hung up and immediately called Jessica, Nate, and 3 other friends who'd been following the story. Then I called the local news station and tipped them off about a possible public confrontation between the embezzlement suspects and their betrayed spouses. If Marissa and Troy wanted to explain themselves, they could do it in front of the whole city. The next day, Riverside Park was crawling with people. Word had gotten out somehow, maybe through social media, maybe through the news tip, and half the town had shown up to watch the drama unfold. News crews, curious neighbors, even some of Troy's former clients who'd been burned by the scandal. I arrived early and set up at the pavilion, a small wireless microphone clipped to my shirt and connected to the park's PA system. When Marissa and Troy arrived, looking haggard and desperate, their voices would carry to every corner of the crowd. They showed up right at noon, both dressed like they were attending a funeral, which, in a way, they were, the funeral of their reputations, their careers, their freedom. "Tom," Marissa said hesitantly as they approached, "there are so many people here." "I know. They all want to hear your story." I gestured to the crowd, which had grown to nearly 200 people. "Why don't you start with how the affair began?" Troy stepped forward, trying to salvage some dignity. "This is ridiculous. We're not going to air our private business in front of—" "You aired it in my car," I interrupted, my voice carrying clearly through the PA system. "You aired it in hotel rooms paid for with stolen money. You aired it when you planned to run away together with $250,000 that didn't belong to you." The crowd murmured angrily. Several people shouted questions at Troy and Marissa, who stood frozen like deer in headlights. "Tell them about the other women, Troy," I continued. "Tell them how many affairs you were running at the same time. Tell them how you convinced my wife to help you steal money from your own company." "That's not how it happened," Marissa protested, stepping closer to the microphone. "Tom, you're making it sound worse than it was." "Really? Then explain it to everyone. Explain how it's not as bad as it sounds." And incredibly, she tried, standing in front of 200 people with news cameras rolling and her voice echoing across the park. Marissa attempted to justify the unjustifiable. "I was lonely," she began, tears streaming down her face. "Tom worked all the time, never paid attention to me. I felt invisible in my own marriage. When Troy showed interest, when he made me feel beautiful and wanted again, I couldn't resist." "What about the money?" someone in the crowd shouted. Marissa looked at Troy, who was staring at the ground in mortification. "I didn't know about that at first. Troy said he had savings, that he'd been planning to leave his wife for years. It wasn't until later that I learned the truth." "But you didn't stop seeing him," I said. "You didn't turn him in. You helped him plan to escape with the stolen money." "I was in love," she cried. "I know that doesn't excuse what we did, but I was in love, and I thought we could start over somewhere new. I thought we could be happy." "On stolen money," I pressed. "You thought you could be happy spending money stolen from Troy's clients, his company, people who trusted him?" Troy finally looked up, his face red with shame and anger. "You want the truth, Tom? Fine. Yes, I stole the money. Yes, I was having affairs with multiple women. Yes, I convinced Marissa to help me cover it up. But you know what? I don't regret it." The crowd gasped. Even I was surprised by his audacity. "I don't regret it because my marriage was dead, just like yours was. Jessica and I were strangers living in the same house. You and Marissa were the same. We found something real together, something worth fighting for. If that makes us criminals, then so be it." "Worth fighting for?" Jessica's voice cut through the crowd like a knife. I hadn't seen her arrive, but there she was, pushing through the people to face her husband. "You stole from your own clients, Troy. You stole from people who trusted you to handle their money. You destroyed our marriage, our reputation, our entire life. For what? For her?" She pointed at Marissa, who shrank back as if she'd been slapped. "She's not even the only one," Jessica continued, her voice rising. "The FBI found evidence of at least 4 other affairs. 4 other women you were seeing while you were stealing money to pay for hotels and gifts and trips. You're not a romantic, Troy. You're a sociopath." The crowd was getting ugly now, shouting questions and accusations at both Troy and Marissa. Someone threw a plastic water bottle that bounced off Troy's shoulder. Another person yelled about their own money that had been invested with Troy's firm. "That's enough," Troy said, grabbing Marissa's arm. "We're leaving." "No," I said, stepping in front of them. "You wanted to explain yourselves. You wanted people to understand. So finish the job." I looked out at the crowd, at the news cameras, at the faces of people whose lives had been touched by this scandal. Then I looked back at my wife and her lover, 2 people who had thought they were smart enough to destroy multiple lives without consequences. "Tell them about the fake business accounts," I said. "Tell them about the forged signatures. Tell them about the clients' retirement funds you gambled away in Vegas. Tell them everything, Marissa. Tell them who you really are." But she couldn't. Neither of them could. They stood there in front of 200 people, exposed and humiliated and completely without defense. Finally, Troy broke. "Screw this!" he snarled, pushing past me toward the parking lot. "Screw all of you? We'll see what a jury thinks." Marissa followed him, both of them fleeing through a crowd that parted reluctantly, people shouting questions and insults as they passed. I watched them go, feeling a satisfaction deeper than anything I'd ever experienced. They would go to prison. The evidence was overwhelming. Their public confession had been recorded, and their lawyers would almost certainly advise them to take plea deals. Their careers were over, their reputations destroyed, their comfortable lives reduced to ashes. But more than that, they would always know that Tom Garrison, the pathetic, clueless husband they'd dismissed, had been the one to bring them down. As the crowd dispersed and the news crews packed up their equipment, Jessica walked over to where I stood. "Feel better?" she asked. "Actually, yes," I said, surprising myself. "For the first time in months, I feel like myself again." "What happens now?" I looked around the park, at the pavilion where Marissa and I had shared our first kiss 23 years ago, at the trees we'd walked under when we were young and in love and thought we'd be together forever. "Now I start over," I said, "and this time I do it right." 6 months later, Troy Dalton was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for embezzlement and fraud. Marissa received 4 years as an accomplice. Both were ordered to pay full restitution to their sufferers, though the money had long since been spent. Jessica and I stayed in touch, two people bonded by shared betrayal and the satisfaction of seeing justice served. We never became romantic. We both needed time to heal, but we became friends in a way that felt honest and real. I sold the house, moved to a different part of town, and expanded my IT business. Turns out, being the guy who brought down a high-profile embezzlement scheme was actually good for business. People trusted me, respected me in a way they never had before. And sometimes, when I was working late in my new shop, I'd remember Marissa's voice on that dash cam recording, calling me pathetic and clueless. I'd remember Troy's arrogant confidence, his certainty that he was smarter than everyone around him. Then I'd smile and get back to work, knowing that sometimes the underdog wins after all.